much for that. How we all doing today? Great. Are we grateful today? Yes. Well, I hope we're going to be even more grateful by the end of this service, or at least really move into this wonderful, wonderful thing that we call gratitude. Meister Eckhart said, if the only prayer that you ever say is, thank you, it will be enough. And, you know, there is incredible deep truth to that. Okay, so I'm going to share with you some things from Reverend Michael Gott, who is the senior minister at Unity of Houston. And he reminds us that, of course, Unity was founded in the 1800s, and that one major influence of Unity, especially for Charles Fillmore, was science. Charles loved the scientific approach to spirituality. He liked to be able to prove what it was that he was sharing, that he was teaching. The reality that our universe is regulated by universal law. That's great news for us, isn't it? Because when we learn what these laws are and we learn how to work with these laws, our life becomes somewhat easier, right? It doesn't mean that we're never going to have things that come up. But life does become easier because we know how to work with these laws. Today we're going to talk in particular about the law of cause and effect. And the law of cause and effect is true both in physics and in spirituality. Our thought is causative. And this really goes with our third guiding principle, which is thoughts held in mind produce after their kind. Okay, we also know that we are created in and after the image of God. Now, God is the ultimate creator. God said, let there be light, let there be land, let there be fish, and let there be animals. And so God is the ultimate creator. What that means for us, being created in and after the image and likeness of God, is that we also have that creative potential. And we have the opportunity to use that creative potential in a lot of ways. And again, today we're going to talk about how we can use that creative potential through the power of gratitude. We get to choose the cause, and through our thoughts and our focused thinking and our faith, and then we get to reap the benefits of the effects, right? So that's what this whole thing is about. So is gratitude a cause or an effect? Yes, both. It was a trick question, you guys. Gratitude is both a cause and an effect. So we have both a directive aspect and a receptive aspect to us. The directive is just what I talked about, that we can, use the power of our thoughts, words, actions to focus. And it's incredibly important that we understand that. Another aspect of us, which is just as important, is this aspect of being receptive. And this, for me, is where we come into the co-creative aspect of our experience. And this is where, if we're using gratitude as a cause, and I'm going to explain that more, where we open ourselves up to recognizing there is something greater here that I live and move and have my being in, and it is infinite possibilities and potentialities, so I am willing to surrender into this something greater. I recognize that I can have an idea in my mind of what I think is best for me, but when I am surrendering, when I am receptive, when I am open and almost saying this or something better, that this greater something is many more options that are available for me that are going to be a lot better for me. Have we all at least had that experience once in our life? Yeah. Have we probably had that experience a lot of times in our lives? Absolutely. So it's both and both and are important. So talking about gratitude, we usually see gratitude as an effect. We receive something, a compliment or a gift, and we say thank you. So gratitude is the effect. But what we're going to talk about today is how when we use that gratitude and we amplify it and we bring the volume up on it, that gratitude then becomes a cause for even more wonderful effects in our life, which gets us excited because then we want to use the power of gratitude more because we're having more and more. So it's this wonderful, beautiful experience that we have. So let's talk about that, making gratitude a cause in your life. And I'm going to tell you the only thing that will change in your life by really working with the power of gratitude, the only thing that will change in your life is everything. And it will change for the better. And that I can guarantee you that it will change for the better. Okay, so I shared this a couple of years ago, but I love everything that has to do with what this man talks about. His name is John Kralik, and he wrote a book called A Simple Act of Gratitude. And as I read this book, and as I'm going to share some of what he shared today, what you're going to find is that gratitude, it's a practice that ultimately becomes what the title of today's talk is living gratitude, is where after we practice for a period of time, we no longer have to practice anymore because it becomes who we are and what we are. But there's an incredible depth of beauty to this journey of working with gratitude, and you're going to see that as I share his story with you. So at 52 years old, John Kralik, he's an attorney, and he had his own firm. And at the end of the year, he realized that not only did he not make any money for the year, but he actually lost money that year. And it devastated him partly because he couldn't pay his employees any bonuses, and that was really hard for him. In addition, his firm was losing its lease, and he didn't have the money to get a new lease. After a divorce, he was living in a very cheap apartment. He had to leave his home, and he said even the things that seemed to be working in his life at that time, the woman that he was dating just decided that she was no longer going to see him, and she left. And he had a $1 million jury verdict that would have bailed him out, but the judge nullified it, and so that didn't happen. So here he is at the end of 2007, and he's kind of low. So he said on New Year's Day of 2008, he decided to go for a walk up the Echo Mountain Trail in Pasadena, California, where he lived. And he said that when he got up there, he heard a voice that he did not recognize, and all that he knew was that it wasn't his own voice. And I want to clarify here, at least for me, I know when I say that I heard a voice, I don't actually hear an audible voice, but it's a knowing. It's something that presses in and you just know it. And it feels like it's a voice, but it's not really a voice. And maybe some people actually hear a voice, and that's great. But so he heard this voice, and the voice said to him that he needed to learn to be grateful for the things he had, rather than to focus on the things he wanted or the many things that he felt that he had lost. Okay, so I'm going to say that again. Focus on be grateful for the things that he had, rather than on even what he wanted, and certainly not on what he felt that he had lost. So he decided that he was going to create a gratitude practice, and he was going to handwrite 365 thank you cards. And he really spoke about this idea of handwriting the cards. He said that when he would sit down and he would take the time to put that pen to paper, and it was a beautiful kind of a meditative time for him as he was writing what he was grateful for to whomever he was writing these cards to. But he said the other side of that is, how many of us receive handwritten gratitude cards? Not many of us. Because it's kind of a lost practice, isn't it? I keep thinking, what are our kids going to do? They don't even know how to write cursive. Makes me sad. Anyway, so the other side of that is when you receive a handwritten card, you know that person has taken time just for you. That's pretty special, isn't it? So that in and of itself is an incredible blessing. Okay, so he said it took a little bit more than a year to finish this 365 handwritten cards. But he said that his life was transformed in ways that he had not even begun to expect. So he didn't go into this practice thinking this is a causative thing that I'm doing to change my life. He was desperate. He just heard this voice that said, son, you need to get off your pity pot and flush it. And you need to focus on what you're grateful for. So he said that as he saw how his children and his coworkers and his acquaintances, and he said even his barista had blessed his life, and as he acknowledged by writing to them, he said his blessings seemed to multiply. Imagine that. Imagine that. He said when he was grateful for clients paying their bills, he would handwrite them a note to say, thank you so much for paying your bill on time. More clients started paying their bills on time. He said when other attorneys would give him references and he would write thank you notes for giving me this reference, he started getting more referrals and more references. But he said the benefits were not just economic, that his barista, who he had written a handwritten note to her, said, so when I saw this note, I realized that what I do really does count. And to me, that's one of those things that's the depth and the beauty of acknowledging, not just saying thank you, but really moving that gratitude to something more and making it personal. You know, it changes people's lives when we do that. And it certainly changes ours, because it's in the giving that we're receiving, right? We're always the first benefactor of whatever it is that we're giving. He said that by showing others how their lives had meaning in his, that he found them reflecting back to him how his life had meaning in theirs. Again, another beautiful aspect to what this gratitude practice is about. And he said he just gained this overall sense of peace about his life because he started to recognize that he was living a good life. And that made him feel good that he, to have somebody acknowledge that. You're a good person, you're doing good things, and living a good life. And he said, almost without intending to do so, he started to change his life in ways that would make him more worthy of receiving thank you notes. So this is this, to me, exponential thing and it's not done yet. I'm not done yet with telling you all these benefits. Okay, by the end of February, and I love this so much, and I'm going to encourage us to think about doing this. He said by the end of February, when somebody asked him, how are you? He didn't lament. He said, I'm grateful. And he would say, even if I just said I'm grateful that I could make payroll this week, that was what he said. But I'm grateful, that today I can see the sun outside. I'm grateful today that I ended up on this side of life, But what a beautiful thing when somebody asks you, how are you? I'm grateful. And the cool thing about that too, to me, is that if you say to somebody who's not expecting it, I'm grateful, and they're going, oh, wow, that made me feel good. And then they may turn around and do that very same thing. You have no idea the ripple effect when you are willing to do that very thing. Okay. Then he said, as I gave more thought, and this is important to who I would be sending my thank you notes to, he realized how many people that he had not been grateful for in his life. Wow. It's funny because you think 365, but I think actually we would find it a lot easier than we think when we start opening ourselves up to really looking around at that. Okay, he said benefits from others. His hairdresser, who he wrote a thank you note to, was getting ready to quit. She just didn't think that she was doing a good job or that she mattered, and he wrote her a handwritten thank you note and acknowledged her, and it changed her, and she continued doing what she was doing. He said that a woman that read his book, who was living in a nursing home because she had a stroke on her right side, said that every day she praised God that she was left-handed. And she said, so I write thank you notes and birthday cards to the staff here all the time. And then another woman who lived in Omaha had a priest that made a difference to her 22 years earlier. So she hand wrote him a note, and it got to him just a few days before he made his transition. And it was just a real blessing for him. And then this same woman wrote a thank you note to a teacher of hers from years ago. She went to the teacher, and as they walked in and she had the flowers in the note, the teacher immediately just put her head down on her desk and started crying because nobody in 23 years told her that they were grateful for her. I mean, this stuff is powerful. The life-changing benefits of practicing the power of gratitude. This is powerful beyond measure. And that's why when Meister Eckhart said, if the only prayer you ever say is thank you, it will be enough, because gratitude is that magnanimous in our lives. It makes that big of a difference. So he said, at the end of his book, having just written his 860th note, I can say that I learn in new ways all the time that gratitude is a pathway to the peace that we all seek in life, the peace which passes all understanding. I still feel calmed in my dark or stressful times by writing thank you patiently and neatly to those who have helped and comforted me. So you can do that if you want. You don't have to do that. But here's what I would encourage you to do, even if you don't want to handwrite notes, to take the opportunity with people in your life and go beyond just saying thank you. And it can be a little uncomfortable because you're going to be face to face and you're going to be saying some vulnerable and personal things. But I promise you that it will make a difference for you, and it will make such a difference for the people in your life. You talk about wanting to help expand and increase other people. If you feel like there's somebody in your life who's really struggling right now, start looking at things to praise them for and to be grateful for, and you will be amazed at how that changes them inside. Okay, so bottom line, gratitude. We've talked before about writing 5 gratitudes a day, and that's an incredibly important and powerful practice, and I encourage everybody to do that and I think it's great kind of to do it at the end of the day, because I found that by going back in my day and thinking about what I'm grateful for, I find some things that I forgot to be grateful for during the course of my day. So it's kind of like receiving the blessing after it's already occurred. But recognize that where we want to get is we want to get to this place of living gratitude. But what is going to get us there is practices and doing the work. And so that's one of the things that I want to encourage us to recognize, is that we have to make the commitment and have the discipline to do the work that is ours to do if we want to have a greater and grander experience of life, right? Yeah. And so whatever it is that you need to do to make that happen, just do it. Make that happen. Okay. So I want to talk for a minute about our great teacher and master metaphysician, Jesus, because Jesus always taught us by thanking in advance. Now, I want to tell you, Jesus didn't have to verbally thank in advance. Jesus knew. He was so at one in the knowing of, but he did that for us so that we could see the power of that. And when he would do that, he knew that he had come forth from the field of godness, whatever you want to call that, and that everything that he would ever need was already right there for him. And he told us that over and over again. He tried to get us to get that no matter what is occurring in our life, that everything we need is already right here. And when we get into that consciousness of gratitude, that literally, it's kind of like when you go outside at night and it's dark, but you're out there for a little while, and all of a sudden you can see things that you didn't see when you first went out there. When we get into this consciousness of gratitude, where we're willing to expand and open up and say, okay, there's so much here for me to be grateful for, and I am grateful, we start seeing things that were always there, but we couldn't see them before because we were in a closed down state. So he knew and tried to teach us that by staying in this consciousness of gratitude, that we would start to see, and then we would start to lay claim to this that is already here, is always been here for us. So the more that we focus on the presence of God, and isn't that what he did? He always focused on the presence of God, on the presence of the divine, on the presence of Holy Spirit, again, whatever you want to call it, we begin to see more of that. And it all begins with a simple thank you. with a simple thank you. Now, I want to talk for a minute about the dark times, about those times that we go through that are the really tough times. And I'm going to assume that we've all been through them. And some people may even be going through some really tough times right now. And I would quote the author, but I don't know who the author is of this, so I'm going to share some of what this author says. He said, "So often those of us in New Thought erroneously believe that we must chase the clouds away, that their very presence suggests that something has gone awry in our spiritual journey." And I know that I do talk about this a lot because I don't ever want us to beat ourselves up because things fall apart. In fact, here's what I'm going to tell you, that when you're working this stuff and you're staying focused, probably some things are going to fall apart because they have to in order for the newness, what it is that you're desiring to spring forth in your life. So hang on there, because I promise you it's all working for your greater good. But they said, what if the darkness was the exact circumstance we needed to catapult us on our spiritual journey? How many of us can look back and say that was the worst, best thing that ever happened to me? And can we say it multiple times? Oh yeah, that was the worst, best thing. That was the worst, best thing. Because in hindsight, we can see that all things really do work together for the greater good, especially when we are open to it, especially when we are willing to go into gratitude and say, I don't get it, I'm not understanding this, but I trust, and I'm willing to be open to this, and I'm just gonna say thank you, thank you, thank you. They said that we all have those experiences where we feel like the ground has gone out from underneath us. It may be a death of someone, maybe a loss of a job, it may be that we just haven't followed our heart. And oftentimes we pray that, God will take that situation away. I don't know about you guys, but I know when I'm in those painful places, please take the pain away. Yeah, we don't like to be in pain, do we? It's hard to be in pain. And yet here's what I'm going to tell you, is that the practice of gratitude is what will help heal that pain faster than anything, when we can finally move into that place of gratitude. And you know what? In the beginning, when you're in this place, you may not even feel sincere, and that's okay, because that's the thing, we're just starting out, and as you practice it, as you work with it, you start to feel it, and you start to believe it, and you gain that momentum. And as you gain that momentum, guess what? It's like the heavens open up. It's beyond what I can even explain, because it's that incredibly powerful. So that's another thing. Okay, so what is your best, worst thing? Can you look back on that and be grateful, right? And I think for me, when I can finally look back at some of those situations or some of the people in my life, and I can finally say thank you, I know that I've done a lot of inner healing when I can finally say thank you to that. One of the other things that I want to touch on here about gratitude is that Reverend Greg Barrett talks about a man, and I think he went through cancer 3 times, and he had just beat cancer for the 3rd time. And so Greg was really, just like amazed by this, and he sat down and talked to him, and he said, what did you do? And he said, all I did all day, every day, he said at least 1,000 times a day, I just said thank you. He said, I just walked around saying thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And it wasn't even necessarily that it was a directive, like thank you for the healing. He probably did some of that. But it was more just this overall sense of thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. If the only prayer you ever say is thank you, it will be enough. Because when you're saying thank you, you probably are feeling like you've received something good, right? So if you walk throughout your day and you're just saying thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, you are opening yourself up in ways that it's unimaginable. And the good that has the opportunity to pour into your life is also unimaginable, but it's going to be really great. Charles Fillmore said, A grateful heart will always attract to itself in one way or another, through human hands or through wonder-working ways, the great things needed to solve the particular situation. It is an outworking that you can stake your life on. And I love that. And I love that he says wonder-working ways, because that's where it's like, I can't explain it, but it's real. It's real. And it will change your life. So I'm going to invite you, if you would like, to just turn to somebody and say, how are you? And you can respond by saying, I'm grateful. I'm grateful. How are you? You too. Everybody's smiling and happy. That's so great. And I am grateful for each and every one of you. I'm grateful for Unity of Springfield, for everybody who has come before us, for all of us who are here today, and for what we are becoming together.